For centuries, investigators of human nature have straddled two different realities. On one side, we have the somatically verifiable landscape of the physical body. On the other, the internal theater of subjective mental processes. This tension is built directly into the origins of the discipline. The ancient Greeks conceptualized consciousness as an explicit physical and respiratory event, asserting that a human being breathes in their psyche, their mind and soul, at the moment of birth. Modern psychology resolves this tension by focusing strictly on methodology. The scientific status of the field relies on empiricism, direct measurement, and testable hypotheses to separate fact from folklore. This infographic maps the modern working matrix, dividing human activity into two categories. Overt behaviors encompass physical manifestations like motor actions, reaction times, and markers like crying. Covert mental processes include memory storage, abstract thoughts, and subjective social roles, structures inaccessible to direct observation. Because an experimenter cannot physically see a mental process, they must systematically measure its behavioral proxy. Translating subjective inner states into verifiable somatic data provides the bridge necessary for empirical study. This diagram illustrates the circular goal axis, charting the iterative loop that drives psychological inquiry. The primary phase demands pure observation and classification. A researcher documents overt anomalies, persistent flat affect, chronic sleep disruptions, severe motivation loss, grouping them under a standardized label like depression. Once a condition is clearly described, researchers seek to identify its underlying causes. This requires breaking the phenomenon down into distinct, testable variables across biological, psychological, and social spheres. This visual guide details the relationship between variables in empirical testing. The independent variable acts as the potential cause, while the dependent variable is the observed effect on behavior. To track these variables, scientists rely on operational definitions. An abstract construct like depression is turned into a concrete parameter, such as a specific score on a verified diagnostic screener. Some factions within contemporary neuroscience push for materialistic reductionism, arguing that abstract psychological constructs should be discarded. In this view, all subjective realities are merely downstream byproducts of physical brain structures. Relying purely on functional neuroimaging introduces severe methodological limits. Many landmark brain scan studies suffer from small sample sizes and utilize linear statistical algorithms to analyze an organ that operates on multidimensional geometric networks. Furthermore, neuroimaging data is strictly correlational. When an amygdala fires during a state of terror, a scan cannot answer the causal sequence. Did the electrical activation create the fear? Or did the participant's cognitive interpretation of a threat trigger the limbic activity? A state like chronic loneliness is defined by subjective internal perception, not just blood flow. While an fMRI records a physical footprint, a validated psychometric survey captures the actual psychological reality of that isolation, offering greater predictive utility in a clinical setting. Understanding human behavior requires integrating distinct top-down theoretical frameworks. Subjective experience cannot be treated merely as biological exhaust. Returning to the circular goal axis, a verified causal model allows scientists to advance to the third phase, prediction. Large-scale epidemiological data helps researchers forecast future probabilities. For instance, if a healthy individual suffers an environmental shock, statistics predict a natural dissipation of depressive symptoms within a strict 90-day window. These predictive frameworks require precise mathematical modeling. If the underlying math is corrupted by chance or experimental manipulation, the forecasts become useless. This table compares type 1 and type 2 errors, detailing the two primary ways a hypothesis test can fail when determining statistical significance. A type 1 error occurs when researchers incorrectly reject a true null hypothesis. They detect a false positive, claiming an effect exists when the results were actually driven by chance. A type 2 error is the failure to reject a false null hypothesis. The research misses a true positive, overlooking an effect that actually exists in the population. To force statistical significance, some experimenters engage in p-hacking, continuously running tests until a chance association crosses the mathematical threshold. To systematically prevent data dredging and combat the replication crisis, modern researchers universally share raw data and publicly pre-register their study protocols. Predictive utility in the social sciences relies entirely on mathematical integrity and methodological transparency. This diagram advances to the final phase of the axis, control. The ultimate objective of psychological science is to actively alter environmental and biological conditions to optimize human outcomes and alleviate psychological suffering. An applied clinical intervention synthesizes these discoveries. Localized medications chemically balance neurotransmitter deficiencies, while structured cognitive behavioral therapies systematically work to reshape a patient's internal thought patterns. This power to shape behavior is achieved through behavioral principles, the systematic application of stimulus and response to foster healthy habits. These identical mechanisms can be subverted. The same logic used to reinforce positive clinical changes is often deployed to manipulate consumer purchasing loops or engineer digital architectures designed to be intentionally addictive. Control is a morally neutral capability. Its value is dependent strictly on the transparent ethical framework guiding its application. Conventional quantitative research relies heavily on sterile laboratory settings to isolate variables. This often extracts human behavior from its natural environmental context. Applying these sterile lab paradigms to diverse or marginalized communities risks essentializing those populations and failing to align with their local worldviews. Qualitative inquiry provides a necessary counterweight. Researchers contextualize psychological data by mapping local meanings and accounting for historical forces like intergenerational trauma or colonization. Methodologies like ethnography and phenomenology require deep immersion within a community. They capture a thick description of a shared experience, preserving the storied meaning behind a behavior rather than just the math. To acquire a holistic view, modern researchers deploy mixed methods designs, systematically integrating quantitative statistical metrics with qualitative contextual narratives within a single project. Emerging digital technologies are fundamentally upgrading how this mixed data is captured. Passive, continuous data collection via smart wearables tracks dynamic biometric metrics. This bypasses the inherent biases and recall errors found in traditional subjective self-report surveys. By capturing behavior as it unfolds in real time, these technologies elevate the ecological validity of the research, ensuring the findings represent life as it is actually lived. The architecture of psychological inquiry succeeds by balancing two extremes: the rigorous precision of objective measurement and the deeply nuanced subjective reality of the human condition.